happens when you spend 7 years trying to prove you belong to a family that treats you like hired help? When they hand out gifts to every family member except you, then ask you to serve drinks to the guests. Well, let me tell you about the night everything changed when one man's voice turned a retirement party into a reckoning that left everyone speechless. I'm standing in front of my bedroom mirror adjusting the navy blue dress I've worn to every family event for the past 3 years. The same dress that Karen, my mother-in-law, once described as sensible, in that tone that somehow makes compliments feel like insults. Tonight is Henry's retirement party. My father-in-law is stepping down after 35 years with the fire department, and I should be excited. I should be looking forward to celebrating the man who's been more of a parent to me than my own father ever was. But as I smooth down the fabric and check my reflection one more time, I feel that familiar tightness in my chest. The same feeling I get every time we gather as a family. It's like being invited to a party where everyone forgot to tell you the dress code and you're left standing there in the wrong outfit trying to pretend you belong. My mother used to tell me something when I was little. She'd say, "Real love doesn't need a spotlight, Ava. It's steady. It shows up." I hold on to those words like a lifeline, especially on nights like this. Mom passed away when I was 25, 3 years before I met Mark, and I wish she could have been here to see me married. But more than that, I wish she could have been here to help me navigate the complexities of loving a family that doesn't quite know how to love me back. The truth is, I've been on the outside looking in for 7 years now. 7 years of Christmas mornings where Karen hands out thoughtful, personalized gifts to everyone except me. 7 years of birthday parties where I'm the one taking photos while everyone else is in them. 7 years of being referred to as Mark's wife, instead of by my actual name, as if speaking it might somehow make me too real, too permanent. I remember the first time I noticed it. Mark and I had been married for about 6 months, and we were at his sister Jenny's housewarming party. Karen was organizing a group photo of all the girls in the family. She gathered Jenny, her other daughter-in-law, Lisa, and even Mark's teenage cousin who was visiting for the weekend. But when I started to join them, Karen just looked right through me and said, "Oh, we have enough people for now." The photographer took 3 different shots, and I stood there holding Mark's beer, watching from the sidelines. When I told Mark about it later that night, he said I was being sensitive, that his mother was probably just nervous about the new camera. He always has an explanation, my husband. Always a reason why what I experienced wasn't really what happened. And maybe that's easier for him to believe than the alternative. But Karen's not cruel in any obvious way. She's not the evil mother-in-law from the movies who openly declares war. She's much more subtle than that, much more sophisticated. She simply pretends I don't exist until she needs something from me. Like when she needs someone to help with the dishes, or when she needs someone to watch the younger kids while the real family members have important conversations in the other room. It's in the small moments that you really feel it. Like last month when she was planning Mark's father's surprise birthday dinner. She called Lisa to ask about dessert options. She texted Jenny about decorations. She even called Mark's brother Tom to coordinate the guest list. But when it came to me, she simply told Mark to make sure your wife knows to bring something. Not a request, not even a direct conversation. Just an instruction passed down through my husband like I'm some kind of employee who needs to be managed. And Mark, bless his heart, doesn't see it. Or maybe he sees it and doesn't know how to fix it, so he pretends it's not happening. He grew up in this family. He's used to the dynamics, the unspoken rules, the way his mother operates. What feels like rejection to me probably just feels like Tuesday to him. But tonight feels different somehow. Tonight I'm carrying something with me that I've never brought to a family gathering before. It's sitting on my dresser right now, wrapped in simple brown paper. A scrapbook. I've been working on it for weeks, staying up late after Sophie goes to bed, carefully arranging photos and mementos from the past 7 years. It's not just any scrapbook, though. It's filled with moments between Henry and my daughter. Pictures of him teaching her to tie her shoes. A drawing she made of him in his firefighter uniform. The ticket stub from the baseball game they went to together last summer. The receipt from the ice cream shop where he takes her every other Saturday, just the two of them for what they call their special grandfather-granddaughter time. Because here's what Karen doesn't understand, what she's never bothered to see. While she's been busy excluding me, Henry has been quietly including my daughter. Our daughter. Sophie may be my biological child from before I met Mark, but Henry has never treated her like anything less than his granddaughter. He doesn't make distinctions between his real grandchildren and Sophie. He doesn't qualify his love. I hear little footsteps in the hallway and Sophie appears in my doorway. She's already dressed for the party in the sparkly blue dress we picked out together last week, complete with the silver shoes that light up when she walks. Her hair is in two neat braids, and she's holding the small bouquet of flowers we bought for Henry. "Mommy, are you ready?" she asks, bouncing on her toes so the lights in her shoes flash. "I want to give Grandpa Henry his flowers." I turn away from the mirror and kneel down to her level. At 7 years old, Sophie has this amazing ability to find joy in everything. She doesn't see the family dynamics that keep me awake at night. She just sees people she loves who love her back. And maybe that's exactly how it should be. "Almost ready, sweetheart," I tell her, smoothing down one of her braids. "What do you think? Do I look okay for Grandpa's party?" She studies me seriously for a moment, tilting her head to the side the way she does when she's really concentrating. "You look beautiful, Mommy, like a princess, but the kind who helps people." I laugh despite myself. "A princess who helps people." "Yeah, like in the stories, the pretty ones who are also brave and kind." She pauses, then adds, "Do you think Grandpa will like his scrapbook?" I glance over at the brown paper package on my dresser. Inside those pages are 7 years of memories. 7 years of Sophie and Henry building forts out of couch cushions. 7 years of bedtime stories and piggyback rides and shared secrets. 7 years of a man who chose to be a grandfather to a little girl who wasn't technically his granddaughter, simply because love doesn't always follow bloodlines. "If he really sees us," I tell Sophie, pulling her into a hug, "he'll love it. And that's the heart of it, isn't it? Being seen, being acknowledged, being treated like you matter. I don't need grand gestures or elaborate displays of affection. I don't need Karen to suddenly start treating me like a daughter. I just need to be seen as a person who belongs in this family, a person who has value beyond what she can provide." I think about my mother's words again as I stand up and grab my purse. Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. And maybe that's what I've been doing all these years without realizing it. Showing up, being steady, loving this family even when they don't quite know how to love me back. Mark appears in the doorway adjusting his tie. He looks handsome in his dark suit, and for a moment I remember why I fell in love with him. Before I understood the complexity of loving someone who comes with an entire family attached. Before I learned that marriage isn't just about two people, it's about two families trying to figure out how to become one. "You look beautiful," he says, and I can tell he means it. Mark has never been the problem. He loves me. I know that. But love in a vacuum is different from love in the context of family, and his family has very specific ideas about who belongs and who doesn't. "Thank you," I reply, picking up the scrapbook. "Are you ready for this?" He nods, but I catch something in his expression, a flicker of anxiety that he quickly covers up. Mark knows tonight might be complicated. He knows his mother has a way of making events about her and her vision of how things should be. But he's hoping, like he always hopes, that this time will be different. Sophie takes my free hand, her flowers clutched in the other. "Can we go now? I want to see if Grandpa likes my picture." "What picture?" Mark asks. "The one I drew of him fighting a fire dragon," Sophie explains matter-of-factly. "It's in the scrapbook Mommy made." Mark looks at me with surprise. "You made a scrapbook?" I nod, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "Just some photos and things, memories of Sophie and your dad." I don't tell him about the hours I spent carefully selecting each image. I don't mention how I wrote little captions in my best handwriting, or how I included the letter Sophie dictated to me last week about how much she loves her Grandpa Henry. I don't explain that this scrapbook represents my attempt to show the family what they might not have noticed. That love has been growing here all along in the quiet moments when no one was paying attention. We make our way downstairs and toward the car. The retirement party is being held at the community center downtown, the same place where Mark and I had our wedding reception 7 years ago. The same place where Karen spent most of our wedding day rearranging the centerpieces I had spent weeks planning, explaining to anyone who would listen that she just wanted everything to be perfect for her son. As Mark starts the car and we begin the drive across town, I find myself thinking about expectations, about the difference between hoping for acceptance and demanding it, about the way you can love people who don't quite know how to love you back and how that doesn't necessarily make you a fool. Sometimes it just makes you human. Sophie chatters from the backseat about all the things she wants to tell Grandpa Henry, about her loose tooth and the book report she's working on, and the butterflies she saw in our garden yesterday. Her voice is full of excitement and anticipation, and I realize that this is what I want to protect. This joy, this uncomplicated love between a little girl and her grandfather. I clutch the scrapbook a little tighter and make a silent promise to myself. Tonight, I'm going to try something different. Instead of spending the evening watching from the sidelines, waiting for permission to participate, I'm going to show up fully. I'm going to give Henry this gift, not because I'm trying to prove my worth to Karen, but because it represents something real, something true. Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. And tonight, I'm showing up. The community center has been transformed into something I barely recognize. When we walk through the doors, I'm hit by a wave of red and gold everywhere. Balloon streamers, table linens, even the napkins match the firehouse colors. Someone has hung a massive banner across the back wall that reads, "Thank you, Captain Henry Morrison, 35 years of service," in bold gold letters. The whole place looks like it could be featured in a magazine spread about perfect retirement parties. And that's exactly the kind of event Karen specializes in. Everything coordinated, everything perfect, everything designed to make sure people walk away, talking about how beautifully everything was organized. I can see her handiwork in every detail, from the precisely arranged centerpieces to the way the gift table is positioned at just the right angle to catch the light from the overhead fixtures. Sophie immediately runs toward the decorations, her light-up shoes flashing with each step. "Mommy, look! It's like a fancy restaurant." She's right. The round tables are covered in crisp white linens with red and gold runners down the center. Each table has a centerpiece made of red roses and gold ribbon with small framed photos of Henry throughout his career scattered around the base. The lighting is warm and inviting, casting everything in a golden glow that makes the whole room feel special. I have to give Karen credit. She knows how to put together an event. This isn't just a retirement party. It's a celebration worthy of the man Henry is, a man who spent 3.5 decades running into burning buildings while everyone else was running out, a man who saved lives and served his community with dedication and honor. He deserves this kind of recognition. We're about 20 minutes early, which was intentional. I always prefer to arrive early to family events. It gives me time to acclimate, to find my footing before the crowd arrives, and I get swept up in the chaos of trying to navigate conversations with people who don't quite know what to do with me. Mark immediately spots his siblings near the front of the room, clustered around a laptop that's connected to a large screen. They're clearly working on the slideshow that will play during dinner, and I can see the tension in Mark's shoulders ease a little. This is his element. He has a job to do, a way to contribute that's clear and defined. "I should go help them with the technical stuff," he says, already moving toward his family. "You know how Jenny gets with computers?" And just like that, I'm on my own. With Sophie, of course, but in terms of adult company, I'm flying solo. This is how it always goes. Mark gets absorbed into the family task at hand, and I'm left to figure out how to occupy myself until someone needs something from me. Sophie is fascinated by the photo displays, pointing out pictures of Grandpa Henry in his younger days. There's one from his academy graduation where he looks impossibly young and serious. Another from some kind of award ceremony where he's shaking hands with the mayor. A candid shot of him laughing with his crew back at the station, covered in soot, but grinning from ear to ear. "He looks like a real hero, doesn't he, Mommy?" Sophie says, studying a picture of Henry carrying a small child out of a house. "He is a real hero, sweetheart." I tell her, and I mean it. Whatever complicated feelings I have about this family, My admiration for Henry has never been one of them. He's exactly the kind of man you'd want rushing toward danger to help you in your worst moment. That's when I notice Karen across the room, clipboard in hand, directing two staff members who are adjusting the position of the gift table. She's wearing a burgundy dress that probably costs more than my monthly grocery budget, and her hair is styled in that perfect way that makes it look effortless but probably took an hour to achieve. She catches sight of us and makes her way over her heels, clicking precisely against the polished floor. Her smile is already in place before she's close enough to speak the practiced expression she wears at all public events. "Oh good, you're here early," she says, but she's looking at Sophie, not me. "Sophie, darling, don't you look absolutely precious?" Sophie beams under the attention. "Thank you. Grandma Karen, do you like my shoes?" She does a little hop to make them light up. "Very festive," Karen replies, though I catch her glance down at the shoes with what might be mild disapproval. Flashing lights probably weren't part of her color scheme vision. Then she turns to me and it's like watching someone flip a switch. The warmth doesn't exactly disappear, but it becomes something more distant, more polite. "The room looks beautiful," I say, because it's true and because I'm trying to start things off on a positive note. "Yes. Well, we wanted everything to be perfect for Henry." She replies as if I'm not part of the we who wanted that. "I hope the catering staff follows instructions. You know how these community center events can be." I don't actually. Most of the events I attend are birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese or school fundraisers in the gymnasium. But I nod anyway. "Is there anything I can help with?" I ask, because that's what I always ask. It's my standard opening move at family gatherings. Offer to help, hope to be useful, try to find a way to contribute. Karen glances around the room as if taking inventory. "I think we have everything under control. The family has been planning this for months." The family. Not we've been planning, not everyone's been working on this. The family. As if I'm not part of it. As if 7 years of marriage and a granddaughter who adores this family doesn't qualify me for inclusion in that simple word. Before I can respond, the staff members Karen was directing earlier approach us with a question about the placement of the audio equipment. She immediately shifts into management mode, leaving Sophie and me standing there while she handles the logistics. I use the moment to really look around the room and try to spot friendly faces. Henry's firehouse colleagues are starting to arrive along with neighbors and family friends. I recognize most of them from previous gatherings, though my interactions with them are usually limited to polite small talk while the more established family members have the deeper conversations. Sophie tugs on my dress. Mommy? Can I go see the pictures again?" "Of course, but stay where I can see you, okay?" She skips off toward the photo displays, and I'm left standing awkwardly near the entrance, clutching the scrapbook and trying to look like I belong here. This is the part of family events that I dread most. The liminal moments when you're not quite sure where you fit or what you're supposed to be doing. More guests start filtering in, and I watch the social dynamics unfold like I'm observing a carefully choreographed dance. Karen moves through the crowd like a gracious hostess, greeting everyone with personalized attention. Mark's siblings and their spouses cluster together near the slideshow setup, troubleshooting technical issues and sharing inside jokes. Henry hasn't arrived yet, but I can feel the anticipation building as more people fill the space. And then I notice something that makes my stomach clench slightly. Every person who walks through the door makes a point of greeting Sophie with genuine affection. She's practically surrounded by people who've watched her grow up, who ask about school and compliment her dress and remember details about her life. But when those same people glance over at me, their acknowledgement is different. Polite, dutiful, a quick nod, or a brief hello before they move on to more important conversations. It's not malicious. They're not being deliberately rude, but there's a clear hierarchy at work here, and I'm definitely not at the top of it. Mrs. Patterson from down the street gives Sophie a warm hug and tells her how much she's grown, then offers me a brief smile and says, "Nice to see you again." Mr. Chen from the firehouse shakes Sophie's hand formally and asks about her drawing class, then nods in my direction with a polite, "How are you doing?" It's like being perpetually introduced as a supporting character in someone else's story. Important enough to be acknowledged, not important enough to be remembered. I find myself gravitating toward the edge of the room near the windows that look out onto the parking lot. From here, I can keep an eye on Sophie while staying out of the way of the main social currents. It's become my default position at these events. Present, but peripheral. That's when Jenny Mark's sister approaches me with her usual mix of friendliness and barely concealed stress. Jenny is the family organizer, the one who coordinates schedules and remembers birthdays and makes sure everyone knows what they're supposed to bring to potluck dinners. She's not unkind to me, but she has a way of making me feel like a task item on her endless to-do list. "Ava, hi," she says, slightly out of breath. "I'm so glad you're here. Listen, we're having a tiny issue with the slideshow timing, and Mark is helping with the technical stuff, but could you maybe keep an eye on the gift table? We don't want any people putting things in the wrong spot." "Of course," I say, because what else am I going to say? Is there a specific system? Oh, just make sure the cards stay with the gifts, that sort of thing. You're so good at organizing. She's already looking past me toward the next task that needs her attention. And there it is. The thing I'm good at. Organizing, managing details, watching over things so the real family members can focus on more important responsibilities. I'm like the family's unpaid event coordinator, always available to handle the tasks that need doing, but don't require emotional investment. I make my way over to the gift table, which is already accumulating an impressive collection of wrapped packages and greeting cards. There are practical gifts, like tools and books, sentimental ones, like photo frames and engraved plaques, and expensive ones that probably came from the upscale department stores downtown. The scrapbook I made feels suddenly inadequate in comparison. It's not professionally wrapped like the other gifts. It doesn't have an elaborate bow or expensive gift wrap. It's just a simple brown paper package with Sophie's drawing of a fire truck taped to the front as decoration. But as I'm arranging the gifts to make room for new arrivals, I catch sight of one of the cards that has come loose from its package. It's from someone named Patricia, and the front has a generic message about retirement and new beginnings. Inside, the handwritten note is brief and impersonal. "Congratulations on your retirement, Henry. Wishing you the best. Patricia and family." That's when it hits me. Most of these gifts, beautiful as they are, represent obligation more than affection. People brought them because it's what you do at retirement parties, because Henry is well respected in the community, and you don't show up to his celebration empty-handed. But my scrapbook represents something different. It represents 7 years of paying attention. 7 years of noticing the small moments between a grandfather and granddaughter. 7 years of documenting love in action, not just love in theory. I'm so lost in this thought that I almost miss the moment when Karen approaches the gift table, her clipboard still in hand and her attention focused on some detail that apparently needs her immediate supervision. "How are we doing over here?" she asks, but she's already scanning the table, mentally cataloging what's been placed where. "Everything looks good," I tell her. "People have been very generous." "Yes, Henry is well loved in this community," she replies, straightening a gift that was perfectly fine where it was. "Of course, we've made sure to invite all the right people. The mayor will be here later and several city council members. It's important that Henry feels appropriately honored." There's something in the way she says appropriately honored that makes me think she's not just talking about the guest list. She's talking about making sure this event reflects well on the family, making sure everything looks perfect from the outside, regardless of what's happening on the inside. That's when she notices my scrapbook sitting among the other gifts, and I see her expression shift slightly. She picks it up, holding it like she's trying to determine what it is without actually opening it. "This is rustic," she says finally, which I think is her polite way of saying it looks homemade. "It's from Sophie and me," I explain. pictures and memories of her and Henry together. Karen nods slowly, but she's looking at the scrapbook like it's a puzzle she can't quite solve. How thoughtful, she says, though her tone suggests she's not entirely sure it's the right kind of thoughtful. She sets it back down among the other gifts, but not in the prominent position it was in before. It gets relegated to the back corner behind the larger, more impressive packages. I want to say something. I want to explain that this simple scrapbook contains more genuine love than all the expensive gifts combined. I want to tell her that inside these pages are moments of pure joy between her husband and my daughter. Moments that happened because Henry chose to see Sophie as family even when others might not have. But I don't say any of that. Instead, I watch Karen walk away to handle whatever crisis her clipboard is telling her needs her attention next, and I feel that familiar tightness in my chest getting stronger. Sophie appears at my side, having finished her exploration of the photo displays. Mommy, when do we give Grandpa Henry his present? Later, sweetheart, when it's time for the gift opening. Will he open ours first? She asks with the confidence of a child who doesn't understand social hierarchies. I look at the gift table where our scrapbook is now hidden behind a crystal vase and a large wrapped box with a gold bow. We'll see, baby, we'll see. That's when I notice him. A man standing quietly by himself near the back of the room watching the social dynamics unfold with the same detached observation that I've been practicing. He's older, maybe in his 70s, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He's wearing a simple dark suit and holding a beer that he doesn't seem to be drinking. I recognize him from family photos as David Henry's younger brother, the one who never married, never had children, but who's been a constant presence in Henry's life. The uncle who shows up to every family gathering but doesn't seem to need to be the center of attention. Our eyes meet across the room and something passes between us. A moment of recognition, maybe, or understanding. He gives me the slightest nod, the kind of acknowledgement that says, I see you, and I see what's happening here. It's such a small gesture, but it feels significant in a way I can't quite explain. For the first time tonight, I feel like someone in this room is actually seeing me as a person, rather than as a function. The crowd continues to grow, and the energy in the room builds toward the moment when Henry will arrive. Mark catches my eye from across the room and gives me a thumbs up about the slideshow, his face flushed with the satisfaction of solving a technical problem. Karen continues to orchestrate the event with military precision, making sure every detail aligns with her vision of how things should be. And I continue to stand at the periphery, watching it all unfold, while trying to figure out where exactly I fit in this carefully choreographed celebration. But now I have something I didn't have before. I have that nod from David, that moment of being seen, and I'm holding on to it like a small light in a room that sometimes feels darker than it should. The scrapbook may be hidden behind the fancier gifts, but it's still there, still waiting for its moment, still representing all those quiet mornings when Henry taught Sophie to crack eggs for pancakes, and all those Saturday afternoons when they worked together in his garden, and all those bedtime stories that ended with her falling asleep against his shoulder. Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. And right now, hidden behind crystal and gold ribbons, that love is waiting patiently for its turn to be seen. The lunch portion of the party has been everything I expected and more. Henry arrived about an hour ago to thunderous applause and genuine emotion from everyone in the room. Watching him walk through that door, seeing his face light up as he took in all the decorations and familiar faces reminded me why we're all here. This man deserves every bit of celebration he's getting. The meal itself was perfectly executed, of course. Karen had arranged for a catered spread that included all of Henry's favorites: roast beef carved at a station garlic, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole made from his late wife's recipe, and dinner rolls that were still warm when they reached our table. Sophie sat between Mark and me, chattering excitedly about everything she wanted to tell Grandpa Henry, completely oblivious to the social undercurrents that have been flowing around us all afternoon. I've been trying to stay present, to focus on the joy of the occasion, rather than the familiar feeling of being on the outside looking in. Henry gave a short speech before we ate, thanking everyone for coming and sharing some funny stories from his early days at the firehouse. His voice cracked a little when he talked about how much the community support has meant to him over the years, and I found myself genuinely moved by his words. But now, as the dessert plates are being cleared away and people are settling back into their chairs with coffee and after-dinner drinks, I can sense that we're moving into the next phase of the evening. The more formal part, the part where speeches will be made and recognition will be given, and everyone will have their moment to honor Henry properly. Karen has been moving around the room with increasing energy over the past few minutes, whispering to family members and staff, clearly orchestrating whatever is about to happen next. I can see her checking items off her clipboard and making sure everyone is in position for whatever she has planned. Then, she makes her way to the front of the room, and the conversations gradually die down as people realize she's about to address the crowd. She takes the microphone with the confidence of someone who's comfortable being the center of attention, and her smile radiates the satisfaction of an event that's going exactly according to plan. "Good evening, everyone," she begins, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I hope you've all enjoyed this wonderful meal and this opportunity to celebrate our dear Henry." There's warm applause, and Henry raises his hand in acknowledgement from his seat at the head table. He looks genuinely happy, surrounded by his colleagues and friends, basking in the appreciation that's been flowing his way all evening. Before we continue with the evening's festivities, Karen continues, the family would like to take a moment to present some special tokens of our appreciation, not just to Henry, but to all the family members who have supported him throughout his career. My heart does a little skip. This wasn't part of the program that Jenny had outlined for me earlier. There was no mention of family gifts or special recognition. But as I look around the room, I can see that Mark and his siblings seem to know what's coming. They're sitting up straighter, paying closer attention, clearly in on whatever Karen has planned. I feel Sophie shift beside me in her chair, and when I look down at her, she's watching Karen with the same curious attention she gives to her teachers at school when they're about to announce something important. You see, Karen continues, a firefighter's career isn't just about the individual. It's about the family that supports them, the spouses who manage the home front during long shifts, the children who grow up understanding that daddy's job means helping other people, even when it takes him away from family time, the daughters-in-law who join the family and embrace our traditions. Daughters-in-law. The phrase hangs in the air and I feel myself lean forward slightly, a cautious hope beginning to bloom in my chest. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the moment when Karen acknowledges what I've been trying to contribute to this family for 7 years. Maybe she's finally ready to see me as more than just Mark's wife or Sophie's mother. So, tonight, Karen says, we want to honor not just Henry, but all the family members who have been part of his journey. She gestures towards a table at the side of the room that I hadn't noticed before. It's covered with a white cloth, and there are several small wrapped packages arranged on top. Someone, probably Jenny, must have set this up while we were eating. I'd like to start by calling up the sons-in-law, Karen announces. The men who married into this family and became Henry's sons in every way that matters. Mark stands up along with Lisa's husband, Tom, and Jenny's husband, Rick. The three of them make their way to the front of the room, looking slightly embarrassed, but pleased by the recognition. I watch my husband walk up there, and I feel proud of him. He really has been a good son to Henry, always available to help with projects around the house or to provide technical support for family events like this one. Karen reaches for the first package on the table. For each of you, she says, we have a small token of appreciation for the way you've supported Henry and become part of our family. She hands each man a long, narrow box, and they open them in unison. Inside are beautiful engraved watches, each one personalized with the man's name and the date of Henry's retirement. Even from my seat across the room, I can see that these are expensive, thoughtful gifts, the kind of thing you'd treasure and pass down to your own children someday. The men hold up their watches for everyone to see, and there's appreciative applause from the crowd. Mark catches my eye and grins, clearly touched by the gesture. I smile back and give him a thumbs up, genuinely happy for him. He deserves recognition for the way he's embraced Henry as a father figure, especially considering that his own father passed away when he was in college. Now, Karen continues, I'd like to call up the daughters, the girls who grew up with Henry as their father and who continue to make him proud every single day. Jenny and Mark's other sister, Beth, who flew in from Seattle for the party, make their way to the front. They're both beaming, clearly emotional about this unexpected recognition from their mother. Karen hands each of them a jewelry box, and when they open them, I can see delicate necklaces sparkling in the overhead lights. These belong to your grandmother, Karen explains, her voice thick with emotion. She always said she wanted them to go to the women who would carry on the family traditions with grace and strength. Jenny and Beth both have tears in their eyes as they hold up the necklaces. These aren't just gifts, they're heirlooms, family treasures being passed down to the next generation. The kind of thing that says, you belong here in a way that nothing else can. I find myself leaning forward in my chair, my heart beating a little faster. Surely I'm next. Surely this is when Karen calls up the daughters-in-law, when she acknowledges that marriage creates family bonds that are just as real as blood relationships. But instead, Karen's attention turns to the children's table where all the grandchildren have been sitting together, ranging in age from Sophie at 7 up to Mark's teenage nephew Connor at 16. And now, Karen says, I want to call up all of Henry's grandchildren, the next generation who will carry forward the values he's instilled in this family. Sophie practically bounces out of her chair with excitement. She loves being included in family activities, and the prospect of receiving a special gift from Grandma Karen has her glowing with anticipation. She hurries to the front of the room along with her 5 cousins, standing in a loose line while Karen reaches for a stack of envelopes from the gift table. For each of you, Karen says, Grandpa Henry has written a special letter, something for you to keep and treasure as you grow up. And we've also included some special memorabilia from his career for each of you to have. She hands each child an envelope thick with contents, and they tear them open with the enthusiasm that only children can muster. Sophie's face lights up as she pulls out a letter in Henry's careful handwriting, and a small firefighter badge that's been mounted on a wooden plaque. Read the letters later with your parents, Karen instructs. But know that each one is written specifically for you with Grandpa Henry's hopes and dreams for your future. The children return to their seats, chattering excitedly about their gifts. Sophie climbs back into her chair next to me, clutching her envelope like it's made of gold. Look, Mommy, she whispers, showing me the firefighter badge. It's just like Grandpa's. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I tell her, and I mean it. Whatever complicated feelings I have about this family, Henry's love for Sophie has never been one of them. The letter he wrote for her is probably filled with encouragement and wisdom, the kind of thing she'll treasure for the rest of her life. But as I'm admiring Sophie's gift, I become aware of a strange silence in the room, the kind of pause that happens when everyone is waiting for something that doesn't come. I look up at Karen, who is still standing at the front of the room with the microphone, but she seems to be wrapping up rather than continuing. Thank you all for allowing us to share these special family moments with you, she says. Henry is truly blessed to have such a wonderful support system. Wait, that's it. That's the end of the family recognition. I feel like I've missed something, like there's been some kind of miscommunication. Surely there's more coming. Surely this isn't the moment when I realize that after 7 years of marriage, I'm still not considered part of the family that deserves recognition. But as Karen steps away from the microphone and begins to move back toward her seat, the reality of what just happened starts to sink in. The sons-in-law were recognized. The daughters were honored with family heirlooms. The grandchildren received personal letters and meaningful keepsakes. And I received nothing. Not even an acknowledgement that I exist. I sit there in my chair, still smiling automatically, because that's what you do at public events. But inside, I feel like I've been punched in the stomach. 7 years of showing up to every family gathering. 7 years of bringing dishes to potluck dinners and helping with cleanup, and remembering everyone's birthdays. 7 years of loving this family and trying to find my place in it. And I'm invisible. The conversations around me are resuming as people process what they just witnessed. I can hear compliments about how thoughtful the gifts were and how lucky Henry is to have such a devoted family. But I feel like I'm underwater, like all the sound is coming from very far away. That's when Karen appears at my table, but she's not carrying a forgotten gift or offering an apology for the oversight. Instead, she's holding a tray of champagne flutes, and she sets it down in front of me with that same practiced smile she's been wearing all evening. "Since you're already standing around," she says, her voice light and casual, as if we're discussing the weather, "would you mind helping distribute these? The waitstaff is getting overwhelmed with the dessert service." I stare at the tray for a moment, trying to process what just happened. In the span of 30 seconds, I've gone from hoping for family recognition to being handed a service task. From waiting to be acknowledged as a daughter-in-law to being treated like unpaid help. My hands are shaking slightly as I pick up the tray, the champagne flutes clinking together with a tremor. The sound seems unnaturally loud in my ears, like everyone in the room must be able to hear my humiliation echoing through the crystal. "Of course," I managed to say, because what else can I say? Make a scene, demand to know why I was excluded from the family gifts, explain to a room full of people that I've spent 7 years trying to earn my place in this family, and I just realized I've been fooling myself the entire time. So I take the tray, and I start walking between the tables, offering champagne to guests who thank me politely and then immediately resume their conversations. I'm moving through the room like a waitress at my father-in-law's retirement party, and the irony isn't lost on me. This is what I am to this family. Not a daughter-in-law deserving of recognition. Not a family member worthy of inclusion. I'm the help. I'm the person who can be counted on to handle the tasks that need doing, so the real family members can focus on more important things. As I'm making my way around the room, offering drinks, and trying to keep my composure, I become aware of Sophie following behind me. She's still clutching her letter and badge, but she's watching me with the kind of concern that children develop when they sense that something is wrong with the adults around them. "Mommy," she whispers when I pause between tables, "didn't we get something?" The question hits me like a physical blow, because of course she noticed. Of course, my 7-year-old daughter picked up on the fact that while everyone else in the family was being honored and recognized, her mother was handed a serving tray. I kneel down to her level, still balancing the champagne flutes, and try to find words that will protect her from the adult complexities of family politics, while also being honest about what just happened. "It's okay, baby," I tell her softly. "Some people just don't see." She tilts her head to the side, processing this information. Don't see how much we love them. Don't see how much we try to be part of the family, but that's okay because we know who we are." She nods solemnly, as if this explanation makes perfect sense to her 7-year-old logic. "Are we still going to give Grandpa Henry our scrapbook?" I look across the room at the gift table where our brown paper package is still hidden behind the more impressive presents. For a moment, I consider it. I consider staying for the gift opening, watching Henry discover the pages of memories Sophie and I created together, hoping that maybe he'll see the love that went into every photograph and caption. But then I look around the room at all these people who just witnessed my exclusion and didn't say a word. At Mark, who's still chatting with his brothers about their engraved watches and seems completely oblivious to what just happened to his wife. At Karen, who's holding court at the head table, probably already planning the next phase of the evening's entertainment. And I realize that I don't want to stay for the gift opening. I don't want to watch our scrapbook get lost among all the other presents. I don't want to stand there hoping for acknowledgement from people who have just made it crystal clear that I don't matter to them. I hand the champagne tray to a passing waiter and take Sophie's hand. "Come on, sweetheart," I say, "let's go." "But what about Grandpa Henry's present?" I look back at the gift table one more time. "Grandpa Henry will get it, but we don't need to stay to watch." Sophie doesn't argue, though I can see she's disappointed about leaving early. She follows me toward the exit, her light-up shoes flashing with each step, a stark contrast to the heavy feeling in my chest. As we reach the door, I catch sight of David Henry's brother still standing in his quiet corner. He's been watching this whole scene unfold, and when our eyes meet, I see something in his expression that I haven't seen from anyone else tonight. Recognition, understanding, maybe even anger on my behalf. He gives me that same slight nod he offered earlier, but this time it feels different. This time it feels like solidarity, like someone finally sees what I've been experiencing all these years. I nod back, and then Sophie and I walk out into the cool evening air, leaving behind the celebration and the family that still doesn't quite know what to do with us. The parking lot is quiet, except for the muffled sounds of the party continuing inside. Sophie swings our joined hands as we walk toward the car, already moving on from the disappointment the way children do. "Mommy," she says as I'm unlocking the car door. "Are you sad?" I pause, considering how to answer. Am I sad? Yes. But I'm also something else, something that feels cleaner and clearer than sadness. A little, I tell her honestly. But you know what? Sometimes you have to stop trying so hard to fit in places where you're not wanted. Sometimes you have to choose yourself. She climbs into her car seat and lets me buckle her in. Does that mean we don't love Grandpa Henry anymore? No, baby, we still love Grandpa Henry. We'll always love him, but we're going to love ourselves too. As I start the car and pull out of the parking lot, I can see the warm glow of the community center in my rearview mirror. The party is still going strong, and it will probably continue for hours. Karen's carefully planned evening will unfold exactly as she envisioned it, and by tomorrow, everyone will be talking about what a beautiful tribute it was to Henry's career. But as I drive home through the quiet streets with my daughter in the back seat, humming softly to herself, I realize something important has shifted tonight. I've stopped waiting for permission to matter. I've stopped hoping for recognition from people who have already decided I don't deserve it. Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. We're literally 2 steps from the exit when I hear the microphone crackle to life again behind us. Sophie and I both pause, her hand still in mine, as a voice cuts through the ambient chatter of the party. But it's not Karen's voice this time. It's deeper, quieter, but somehow it carries more authority than any of the speeches we've heard tonight. "Before anyone leaves," the voice says, calm but unmistakably firm, "there's something I've waited years to say." I turn around and I see David standing at the front of the room, the microphone in his weathered hands. The same David who's been quietly observing from the corners all evening. The same David who gave me those knowing nods. The uncle who never married, never had children, but who's been a steady presence in this family for decades. The room falls silent in a way that's different from the polite attention Karen commanded earlier. This silence has weight to it. Urgency. Like everyone instinctively knows that whatever is about to happen wasn't part of the planned program. Sophie tugs on my hand. "Mommy, is that Uncle David?" "Yes, sweetheart." I whisper, my heart starting to pound for reasons I can't quite identify yet. David adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses and looks out over the crowd with the kind of confidence that comes from having nothing to lose. He's 73 years old, retired from his own career as a high school principal, and he's clearly reached the point in life where speaking the truth matters more than keeping the peace. "I've been part of this family for a long time," he begins, his voice steady and clear. "I've watched children grow up, seen marriages, begin celebrated births, and mourned losses. I've seen this family at its best and its worst. And tonight, I've seen something that I can't stay quiet about anymore." I can feel the tension in the room shifting, like everyone is suddenly paying attention in a way they weren't before. From where I'm standing near the door, I can see Karen at the head table, her face carefully composed but her shoulders rigid with what looks like growing alarm. Mark is looking back and forth between David and me, and for the first time tonight, I see something in his expression that might be recognition, or guilt, or both. "You see," David continues, Sometimes we get so caught up in our own ideas about how families should work that we forget to see what's actually happening right in front of us. We get so focused on bloodlines and traditions that we miss the people who are quietly holding things together. He pauses and his eyes find mine across the room. I've watched this woman, he says, and I realize with a start that he's talking about me, love our family without expecting thanks, without demanding recognition, without asking for anything in return, except to be included. The silence in the room is deafening now. I can hear my own heartbeat in my ears, and Sophie's hand squeezes mine tighter as she senses the intensity of whatever is happening. That, David says, his voice growing stronger, is the truest kind of loyalty. I feel like I'm frozen in place. For 7 years, I've been hoping for someone in this family to see me, to acknowledge what I've been trying to contribute. And now, it's happening, but it's not how I ever imagined it would be. It's not a private conversation or a small gesture of inclusion. It's a public declaration in front of 80 people at Henry's retirement party. I can see gasps and surprised expressions rippling through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson from down the street is looking between David and me with obvious confusion. Some of Henry's firefighter colleagues are whispering to each other, trying to figure out what's happening and why. And Karen is sitting at the head table with her mouth slightly open, clearly trying to process how her perfectly orchestrated evening has just been hijacked by her brother-in-law. For 7 years, David continues, I've watched Ava show up to every family gathering. I've watched her remember everyone's birthdays and bring thoughtful gifts and help with cleanup while others take credit for organizing. I've watched her love Henry's granddaughter like she was her own flesh and blood, and I've watched Henry love that little girl right back. Sophie beams at the mention of her relationship with Grandpa Henry, not fully understanding the adult complexities at play, but clearly proud to be acknowledged. But most importantly, David says, and now his voice is getting quieter, which somehow makes it more powerful, I've watched this family take her contributions for granted. I've watched you all benefit from her kindness, while somehow never quite seeing her as one of you. The room is so quiet, I swear I can hear the air conditioning humming in the background. People are looking around at each other, some nodding slightly as if recognizing the truth in David's words, others looking uncomfortable at having family business aired so publicly. Mark has gone pale. He's staring at me from across the room with an expression I've never seen before. Like he's seeing something clearly for the first time, and he doesn't like what he's discovering about himself. Tonight, David continues, I watched this family hand out recognition to everyone except the person who's been documenting and preserving the most beautiful memories you have. My breath catches. He knows about the scrapbook. Somehow, he knows. Earlier this evening, David explains, I saw Ava arranging a gift at the present table. A simple handmade scrapbook filled with photographs and memories of Henry and Sophie together. 7 years' worth of moments between a grandfather and granddaughter who found each other across bloodlines. I can see people turning to look at the gift table, trying to spot the scrapbook among all the wrapped packages. Karen's face has gone from surprised to something that looks like barely controlled panic. And I realized, David says, that this scrapbook represents something the rest of us have been too blind to see. While we've been busy defining family by genetics and last names and old traditions, Ava has been quietly building bridges, creating connections, preserving love. Henry himself is sitting at the head table looking stunned. Not upset exactly, but overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. He keeps glancing between David and me, and I can see him trying to process what his brother is saying. Sometimes, David says, and now he's looking directly at Karen, the ones we ignore are the ones holding us together. The words hang in the air like a challenge, a statement of truth that can't be taken back or explained away or smoothed over with polite conversation later. I feel tears pricking at my eyes, but they're not tears of sadness anymore. They're something else entirely. Relief maybe, or gratitude, or the overwhelming emotion that comes from finally being seen after years of feeling invisible. Now, David continues setting the microphone back on its stand. I think there's a gift that deserves proper recognition. He walks over to the present table, and I watch in amazement as he moves aside the crystal vase and the large wrapped box with the gold bow. He reaches into the back corner and pulls out our brown paper package, the one with Sophie's drawing of a fire truck taped to the front. The crowd is watching in fascination as David carries the scrapbook over to Henry's table. Henry looks up at his younger brother with an expression of curiosity mixed with growing understanding. This, David says loud enough for everyone to hear even without the microphone, is what love looks like when it doesn't need a spotlight. Henry takes the package from David and carefully unwraps it, peeling back the brown paper to reveal the scrapbook underneath. Even from across the room, I can see his face change as he opens to the first page and begins to take in what Sophie and I created together. The room watches in silence as Henry slowly turns page after page, his expression growing more emotional with each photograph. There's the picture of him teaching Sophie to tie her shoes, sitting on the front porch of his house, with their heads bent together over her sneaker. There's the photo from the baseball game, Sophie wearing his old firefighter cap that's too big for her head. There's the drawing she made of him as a superhero, complete with a cape, and the words, "My grandpa is a hero," written in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. I can see Henry's eyes filling with tears as he takes in 7 years of documented love. 7 years of Saturday morning pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories and shared adventures that someone cared enough to remember and preserve. When he finally looks up from the scrapbook, his eyes find mine across the room. And in that moment, I see something I've been hoping for all these years. Recognition. Gratitude. Love. "Ava," he says, his voice thick with emotion, "would you please come here?" Sophie and I make our way back through the crowd, which parts to let us pass. I can feel dozens of eyes on us, but for the first time tonight, the attention doesn't feel uncomfortable. It feels like finally being seen. When we reach Henry's table, he stands up and pulls both Sophie and me into a fierce hug. "This," he says, his voice just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "is the most beautiful gift I've ever received." Sophie grins up at him. "Do you really like it, Grandpa?" "I love it, sweetheart," he tells her. "And I love both of you." Then he turns to address the room, still holding the scrapbook in his hands. "My brother David is right," he says, his voice carrying clearly even without the microphone. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own definitions of family that we forget to pay attention to the family that's actually being built around us. He looks directly at Karen, and something passes between them. A conversation without words, an acknowledgement of truths that have been ignored for too long. "Ava," Henry continues, "you've been documenting our family's love better than any of us. You've been showing up and showing love and asking for nothing in return, and I'm sorry it's taken us this long to properly acknowledge that." The applause that follows is different from the polite clapping we heard earlier. It's genuine, emotional, like the room collectively realizes that they've just witnessed something important. As we make our way back to our seats, I catch Mark's eye. He's still looking at me with that expression of dawning realization, and when we reach our table, he immediately pulls me aside. "Ava," he says quietly, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I didn't see." "I know," I tell him, and I mean it. "But now you do." David appears at our table, his quiet presence somehow more commanding than all of Karen's orchestration earlier. "Thank you," I tell him simply. He nods. Sometimes the truth just needs someone to say it out loud. As the evening continues around us, I realize that something fundamental has shifted, not just in how this family sees me, but in how I see myself. For 7 years, I've been trying to earn my place here, trying to prove that I belong. But tonight, David reminded everyone in that room that belonging isn't something you earn. It's something you create. And I've been creating it all along, one documented memory at a time, one Saturday morning breakfast at a time, one bedtime story at a time. Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. And tonight, finally, everyone could see that it had been showing up all along. The energy in the room has completely shifted after David's speech. What started as a perfectly orchestrated retirement celebration has become something much more raw and real. People are still processing what just happened, the unexpected disruption, to the evening's planned events. But there's also a sense of anticipation, like everyone knows we're not done yet. Henry has been sitting quietly at the head table, still holding the scrapbook, occasionally turning pages, and studying the photographs with an expression of deep contemplation. I can see him taking in details he might have missed the first time through. The careful captions I wrote in my best handwriting, the ticket stubs, and small mementos I included alongside the photos. The drawing Sophie made of their Saturday morning pancake tradition, complete with stick figures of them both wearing chef's hats. Then slowly, he stands up, not with the quick energy of someone making an impromptu decision, but with the deliberate movement of a man who has something important to say and wants to make sure he says it right. The conversations around the room gradually fade as people notice Henry rising from his chair. There's something about his posture, his expression that commands attention without him having to ask for it. This is a man who spent 35 years as a fire captain, someone who's used to taking charge in crisis situations and making decisions under pressure. He walks to the front of the room, still carrying the scrapbook, and the silence that falls is absolute. Not the polite quiet of an audience waiting for a speech, but the profound silence that happens when everyone instinctively knows they're about to witness something significant. Henry doesn't reach for the microphone immediately. Instead, he stands there for a moment, looking out over the crowd of family and friends who've gathered to honor his retirement. His eyes move slowly across the room, taking in faces, making connections, and when his gaze finally settles on me, I feel my breath catch. "There's one gift I saved for last," he says, his voice carrying clearly through the room without amplification. It's the voice of a man who's used to being heard, who doesn't need electronic assistance to command attention. I feel Sophie shift in her chair beside me, and I reach over to take her hand. Whatever is about to happen, I want her to feel anchored and safe. Henry holds up the scrapbook, opening it to a page that shows him and Sophie building a snowman in his backyard last winter. "These pages," he begins, "show a kind of love that doesn't ask to be seen. Ava gave me memories I'd forgotten I had." He turns to another page, one with a photo of Sophie wearing his old firefighter helmet, while he teaches her how to operate the garden hose. She documented moments I was too busy living to fully appreciate at the time. She saw the importance of Saturday mornings and bedtime stories, and the thousand small ways that families create bonds. The emotion in his voice is unmistakable now. This isn't just polite gratitude for a thoughtful gift. This is a man who's been moved to his core by the realization that someone has been paying attention to his life in ways he didn't even know he needed. But this scrapbook represents something even more important than memories, Henry continues. It represents the difference between someone who shows up because they have to and someone who shows up because they choose to. He closes the scrapbook and sets it carefully on the table behind him. Then he reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a small velvet box, the kind that makes everyone in the room lean forward slightly with curiosity. My heart starts beating faster. I have no idea what's in that box, but something about the way Henry is holding it, the reverence in his movements, tells me it's significant. "My wife Eleanor passed away 12 years ago." Henry says, his voice steady, but thick with emotion. "Before she died, she asked me to hold on to something for her. Something she wanted to give to someone special when the right time came." He opens the velvet box, and even from across the room I can see the glint of something delicate, catching the overhead lights. It's a ring. A beautiful vintage ring with what looks like an emerald surrounded by small diamonds in an intricate setting. "This was Eleanor's mother's ring," Henry explains. "It's been in our family for 3 generations. Eleanor wore it every day until her arthritis made it too painful, and then she asked me to keep it safe." The room is so quiet I can hear my own heartbeat. Sophie is squeezing my hand tighter, sensing the importance of this moment, even if she doesn't understand all the details. "She made me promise," Henry continues, "to give it to the person who reminded me most of herself. someone who heals without asking for credit, someone who sees what others miss, someone who loves quietly and completely. I feel tears starting to blur my vision as I begin to understand what's happening. This isn't just about the scrapbook anymore. This isn't just about tonight's exclusion from the family gifts. This is about 7 years of showing up. 7 years of loving this family without condition. 7 years of hoping to belong. Henry looks directly at me. Ava, would you please come up here? The walk to the front of the room feels like it takes forever and no time at all. I'm aware of every eye in the room following my movement, but for once the attention doesn't feel uncomfortable. It feels like finally being seen. When I reach Henry, he takes my hand gently. Eleanor used to say that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up for each other, especially when it's hard. It's about loving people not because you have to, but because you want to. He holds up the ring, and I can see that it's even more beautiful up close. The emerald is a deep, rich green, and the diamonds surrounding it catch the light like tiny stars. It's clearly an heirloom, the kind of jewelry that carries stories, and history, and love across generations. She made me promise to give this to someone who understood that kind of love, Henry says. Someone who chose this family the way Eleanor chose me. Someone who earned their place not through genetics but through grace. I'm crying now, tears running down my cheeks, as Henry takes my left hand and gently slides the ring onto my finger. It fits perfectly, like it was always meant to be there. This ring represents belonging, Henry says, loud enough for everyone to hear. Not the kind of belonging you inherit, but the kind you create through love and commitment and showing up every single day. The applause that breaks out is immediate and heartfelt, but it's interrupted by the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. I look over to see Karen standing at the head table, her face flushed and her posture rigid with what looks like barely controlled anger. Henry, she says, her voice tight. I think we need to discuss this privately. But Henry holds up his hand, the same gesture he probably used to control scenes at emergency sites throughout his career. We're not doing this today, Karen. The authority in his voice is unmistakable. This is not a request or a suggestion. This is a statement from a man who has made his decision and will not be swayed. He turns to address the room, still holding my hand, with the emerald ring now glinting on my finger. I want everyone here to understand something. Family isn't a competition. It's not about who was here first, or who has the right bloodline, or who meets someone else's definition of what a daughter-in-law should be. His voice grows stronger, more commanding. Family is about love. It's about loyalty. It's about showing up for each other without keeping score. Karen starts to say something, but Henry continues before she can interrupt. If you can't respect what family truly means, he says, looking directly at his daughter-in-law, the doors open. The silence that follows is deafening. No one moves, no one speaks. Even Sophie seems to understand that this is a moment of reckoning, a line being drawn that can't be uncrossed. Henry turns back to me, his weathered hands gentle as he adjusts the ring on my finger. Ava, he says, his voice soft but carrying clearly through the room. You're not family by marriage. You're family because you've earned it, and no one in this room can say otherwise. The words hit me like a physical force. For 7 years, I've been trying to prove that I belong in this family, trying to earn acceptance through service and kindness and perfect attendance at every gathering. But I realize now that the belonging was never mine to earn. It was always mine to claim. Thank you, I whisper, but the words feel inadequate for what I'm feeling. Henry pulls me into a hug, and I can feel his strength and solidity, the same qualities that made him run into burning buildings to save strangers. Thank you, he says into my ear, for loving my granddaughter like she was your own flesh and blood. Thank you for documenting our family's joy. Thank you for showing up when showing up wasn't easy. When we separate, I look out over the crowd and see a range of expressions. Some people are clearly moved by what they've witnessed. Others look uncomfortable, unsure how to process this deviation from social norms. Mark is staring at me with what looks like a mixture of pride and shame, finally seeing clearly what his family has put me through and how I've handled it with grace. But it's David's expression that means the most to me. He's standing near the back of the room, and when our eyes meet, he gives me that same slight nod he's been offering all evening. But this time, it's accompanied by something that looks like satisfaction, like justice has finally been served. Now, Henry says, his voice returning to its normal volume, I believe we have some cake to cut and some more celebrating to do. And just like that, the moment passes and becomes part of the evening's story. But as conversations resume and people begin to move around the room again, I know that everything has changed. The ring on my finger is warm against my skin, a tangible reminder that sometimes belonging doesn't come from proving your worth to others. Sometimes it comes from someone else recognizing the worth you've always had. Sophie tugs on my dress. Mommy, your ring is so pretty. Does this mean we're really part of the family now? I kneel down to her level, this 7-year-old who's been my anchor through all of this. Sweetheart, I tell her, we were always part of the family. Tonight, everyone else just finally realized it. She grins and throws her arms around my neck. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. So much. As we make our way back to our seats, I catch Mark's eye again. He's been watching this entire scene unfold, and I can see him processing what it means about his family, about his mother, about the ways he's failed to protect and defend his wife over the years. Ava, he says when we reach our table, I need to apologize for all of it, for not seeing, for not standing up for you, for letting this go on for so long. I look at him, this man I married 7 years ago, this man I've loved through all the complicated dynamics of joining his family. I know you're sorry, I tell him. The question is, what are you going to do differently now? He nods, understanding that apologies without action are just words. Everything, he says. I'm going to do everything differently. The ring catches the light as I reach for my water glass, and I'm struck by how something so small can represent something so profound. This isn't just jewelry, it's recognition, it's belonging. It's the acknowledgement that love comes in many forms, and the quiet, steady kind might be the most powerful of all. As the evening continues around us, people gradually approach our table to congratulate me and comment on the ring. Some of the interactions feel genuine, born from people who always liked me but never knew how to show it within the family's existing dynamics. Others feel more obligatory, the result of social pressure to acknowledge what Henry has declared. But that's okay. I'm not doing this for them anymore. I'm not trying to win approval or prove my worth. I'm simply accepting what has always been true, that real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. And tonight, it finally got the recognition it deserved. The emerald ring feels warm on my finger as I stand there next to Henry, still processing everything that's just happened. It's not just the weight of the jewelry itself, though it's substantial enough to remind me it's there, with every small movement of my hand. It's the weight of what it represents: acceptance, recognition, belonging. The fit is perfect, which seems almost impossible, given that this ring belonged to a woman I never met. But there it is, sitting on my finger like it was always meant to be there. Like Eleanor somehow knew, even years after her death, exactly who would need this symbol of family acceptance. Mark has been watching from our table throughout this entire exchange, and now I see him stand up and begin making his way toward the front of the room. His face is a mixture of emotions I haven't seen before. Pride, certainly, as he watches his wife finally receive the recognition she's deserved for years. But there's also shame there, visible in the way his shoulders are set, in the careful way he's moving through the crowd. When he reaches us, he doesn't immediately speak. Instead, he looks at the ring on my finger, then at Henry, then back at me. I can see him trying to find the right words for a moment that probably doesn't have any right words. Ava, he finally says, his voice thick with emotion. I owe you an apology, not just for tonight, but for 7 years of not seeing what was right in front of me. The sincerity in his voice is unmistakable. This isn't the quick surface level apology he might offer after a minor disagreement. This is something deeper, something that acknowledges not just what happened tonight, but the pattern of behavior that made tonight possible. I should have stood up for you, he continues, glancing briefly at Karen, who's still standing rigid at the head table. I should have seen how my family was treating you. I should have protected you from this. I look at my husband and this man I've loved through all the complications of joining his family, and I feel something shifting between us. Not forgiveness exactly, because forgiveness implies that what happened was acceptable and just needs to be overlooked. This is something more like understanding, like the beginning of a new way of relating to each other. Just start seeing me, I tell him softly but loud enough that the people nearby can hear. When it counts, when it matters, when I need someone in my corner. He nods, and I can see that he understands this isn't just about family gatherings and gift-giving ceremonies. This is about every moment when he has the choice to either support his wife or default to the path of least resistance with his family. I will, he says. I promise. That's when Sophie, who's been watching this entire adult conversation with the patient attention that children sometimes develop when they sense important things are happening around them, decides that the grown-ups have been talking long enough. She slips away from our table, and before anyone can stop her, marches straight up to the microphone that Henry left on its stand. At 7 years old, she has to stretch to reach it properly, but her voice comes through clear and determined. "Excuse me," she says, and the entire room turns to look at this little girl, in her sparkly dress and light-up shoes. I have something important to say. I start to move toward her, thinking I should probably redirect her before she says something that might complicate this already complex evening. But Henry catches my arm gently and shakes his head. Let her talk, he says quietly. Sometimes children see things more clearly than adults do. Sophie adjusts the microphone with the serious concentration she usually reserves for difficult math problems. My mommy is in the family now, she announces, because love is louder. The phrase hangs in the air for a moment, and I realize she's paraphrasing something I said to her weeks ago when she was upset about a playground conflict. I'd told her that when people are mean, you don't need to be mean back, you just need to love louder. A ripple of laughter moves through the crowd, but it's not the kind of laughter that diminishes what she's saying. It's the warm, appreciative laughter that happens when someone, even someone very small, says something unexpectedly profound. My mommy makes the best pancakes. Sophie continues gaining confidence as she sees that people are really listening to her. And she always remembers everybody's birthdays. And she made Grandpa Henry the best present because she loves him, and she loves me, and she loves our whole family. The applause that starts is hesitant at first, as people try to figure out the appropriate response to a 7-year-old's impromptu speech. But then it grows stronger, warmer, more genuine, because sometimes it takes a child to cut through all the adult complications and get to the heart of what really matters. And if anybody doesn't think my mommy belongs in our family, Sophie adds with the fierce loyalty that only children can muster, then they're just wrong. Because families are supposed to love each other, and my mommy loves everybody the best. The applause becomes more enthusiastic, and I can see people smiling, now genuinely moved by this little girl's passionate defense of her mother. Sophie gives a little bow like she's seen performers do on television, then hands the microphone back to Henry, and skips over to where Mark and I are standing. "Did I do good, Mommy?" she asks, looking up at me with those bright eyes that always see the best in everything. "You did perfect, sweetheart," I tell her, kneeling down to pull her into a hug. Absolutely perfect. As the applause finally dies down, and people begin to settle back into the normal rhythm of the party, I become aware of a notable absence of sound from one particular direction. Karen hasn't said a word since Henry told her they weren't doing this today. She's still standing at the head table, but her posture has changed. Earlier tonight, her silence felt like power, like controlled authority, like someone who was confident in her position and didn't need to justify her decisions to anyone. But now, her silence feels different. It feels like isolation, like someone who has realized that the family dynamics she's been orchestrating for years have just been publicly called into question, and she doesn't know how to respond. I don't feel triumphant about this. I don't feel vindicated or satisfied to see her struggling with the new reality. Mostly, I feel sad for her. Sad that it took a public confrontation for any of this to be addressed. Sad that 7 years of my presence in this family wasn't enough to make her see me as anything more than an outsider. But I also feel something else. Something that feels like freedom. Freedom from the constant effort of trying to win approval from someone who was never going to give it. Freedom from the exhausting work of proving my worth to people who had already decided I didn't have any. The party continues around us, but with a different energy now. People are more relaxed, more genuine in their interactions with me. It's like Henry's public declaration gave everyone permission to acknowledge what some of them probably knew all along, that I've been part of this family for years. And tonight was just the formal recognition of something that was already true. As the evening winds down and people begin to say their goodbyes, Henry finds a quiet moment to pull me aside near the photo displays where this all began. "Ava," he says, his voice gentle but firm. "I want you to know something. You always belonged. Today, I just made sure they saw it." The simplicity of the statement hits me harder than all the elaborate speeches and formal declarations. This isn't about tonight's drama, or the ring, or the scrapbook. This is about a truth that existed long before any of those things happened. "Thank you," I tell him, meaning it more than I've ever meant anything. Not just for tonight, but for the last 7 years. For seeing Sophie as your granddaughter from the very beginning. For including us when others didn't. He waves away my thanks like they're unnecessary. "That little girl is my granddaughter in every way that matters. And you're my daughter, not because you married Mark, but because you chose to love this family even when it was hard." As we gather our things to leave, I catch a sight of our scrapbook still sitting on Henry's table. He's been guarding it carefully all evening, showing pages to people who come over to congratulate him. It's become a conversation starter, a tangible representation of the love that's been building in quiet moments for 7 years. The drive home is peaceful. Sophie falls asleep in her car seat before we're even out of the parking lot, exhausted by the excitement and emotional intensity of the evening. Mark and I drive in comfortable silence, both of us processing what happened and what it means for our family going forward. When we get home and carry Sophie inside, she wakes up just long enough for me to help her change into her pajamas. As I'm tucking her into bed, she reaches for my hand and examines the emerald ring in the soft light from her bedside lamp. "It's like a princess ring," she says sleepily. "It is pretty special," I agree. "Do you think Grandpa Henry's wife would have liked me?" She asks the kind of profound question that children ask when they're too tired to filter their thoughts. I think about Eleanor, this woman I never met, but who somehow knew exactly what kind of person should wear her mother's ring. "I think she would have loved you, sweetheart, just like Grandpa Henry does." Sophie smiles and closes her eyes, satisfied with this answer. Within minutes, she's breathing deeply, lost in whatever dreams 7-year-olds have after eventful evenings. Later, as I'm getting ready for bed, I catch sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. The same mirror where this evening began, where I stood adjusting my navy blue dress and bracing myself for another family gathering where I'd feel like an outsider. But the woman looking back at me now is different. Not because of the ring, though it catches the light beautifully as I brush my teeth. Not because of the public recognition, though that certainly felt meaningful. She's different. Because she stopped trying to prove her worth to people who were never going to see it. I used to think that if I gave enough, if I showed up consistently enough, if I made myself useful enough, I'd eventually be accepted. I thought belonging was something I could earn through perfect behavior and selfless service. But now, I know something different. Belonging isn't about proving your worth to people who don't want to see it. It's about being seen by the right people. people who recognize love when it's offered freely without conditions or expectations. That ring didn't make me family. Henry's voice did. David's courage did. Sophie's fierce loyalty did. Mark's belated recognition did. And now, finally, I walk like I believe it. As I turn off the bathroom light and head toward bed, I think about my mother's words one more time. Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It's steady. It shows up. For 7 years, I showed up. I was steady. I loved quietly and completely, even when that love wasn't immediately recognized or returned in the way I hoped it would be. But tonight proved that steady love doesn't go unnoticed forever. It builds something real and lasting, something that can't be dismissed or overlooked indefinitely. It creates the kind of family bonds that are stronger than genetics, deeper than tradition, more enduring than anyone's narrow definition of who belongs and who doesn't. As I settle into bed next to Mark, who's already asleep, I look at the emerald ring one more time in the darkness. Tomorrow, it will just be a piece of jewelry I wear. But tonight, it's proof that sometimes the love you give without expecting anything in return is exactly the love that changes everything. Real love doesn't need a spotlight, but when it finally gets one, the whole room lights up. Sometimes, the people who love us most quietly are the ones who deserve to be seen the loudest. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that subscribe button and share your story in the comments below. You never know who needs to hear that they're not alone.